Chances increasing for a tropical cyclone threat to eastern Mexico. And now the latest around the wide world of tropics. Tropical Weather Bulletin for May 25th. So we still have a blank screen on our world overview, but the chances are increasing of seeing things popping up now as we move on towards the end of the month, with 3 areas of interest around the world, one of them at a high chance of development that we're going to be looking at in a moment. First, the Atlantic. It's 7 days until hurricane season, so enjoy the quiet whilst it lasts. No areas of interest right now, which is great news for all involved. And it looks like an early season storm might be off the cards for the first time in quite a long time. In the Eastern Pacific though, we are on day 10 of hurricane season, and there's a 70% chance there on the right hand side for a tropical cyclone developing, and early indications show that it could become a significant threat to the coast of Mexico, so we may well see the first storm of the season actually impacting land. In the Western Pacific, we have a new area of interest that's formed way to the southeast of Mindanao, the Philippines, expected to move north-northwestwards. A 10% chance given on that at the moment, but it's uncertain how much confidence that we should be giving that. It's looking fairly decent on satellite. In the Indian Ocean though, there's no areas of interest right now, and we expect that it's probably done for the early season over there. But we'll keep our eyes on it in case there's any more shenanigans. But for now, it's all clear. So here's an image of both of those areas of interest, at least from the National Hurricane Centre's point of view. Maybe a little bit of uncertainty whether the one on the right hand side is actually going to be what becomes that tropical cyclone, but we'll see. The one on the left, of course, that's the 10% area. If it does get any traction, National Hurricane Centre going with 20% at the moment, by the way. If it does get any traction, it will remain very small and weak, and will probably not move very much. It's going to stay pretty much in the same place over the next 5 days. Here's the Atlantic right now, coming up on the satellite imagery, the wide shot. You can see there generally a fairly dry picture, a few fronts moving off the northeast of the United States, and of course the big picture over there in the central part of the US right now, lots of thunderstorms and severe weather going off. A few thunderstorms over Cuba, and a little system off out over the open Atlantic, non-tropical. Here's the Eastern Pacific right now, those two broad areas of convection. The left one rather disorganized, the one on the right more concentrated, but still not particularly well organized yet. But I think that trend may be on the change soon. Looking at the Western Pacific right now, you can see there quite clearly down near Mindanao, that area of interest, rather disorganized, not a huge amount of rotation at the moment, but things could get going for it over the next few days. It would have to happen quickly, and if it does become something, it would again probably be very small and rather weak as it pushes on along the coast of the Philippines. Looking towards the Indian Ocean now, and you can see some convection that was blowing up along the eastern coast of India, but things looking rather quiet. Further south in the Australian region, there is some convection bubbling up around Indonesia, and moving further towards the east, towards the South Pacific, you've got a big frontal system pushing through Vanuatu and New Caledonia, and probably you can see down the far bottom right the shadow of what used to be Cyclone Gina. So let's take a look at sea surface temperatures today, and the 30-degree isotherm looks to be extending itself a little bit in the Eastern Pacific. Temperatures certainly warm enough for both of those potential systems, but the one on the right hand side, the eastern one, has a good chance there, 30 degrees Celsius all the way up to a potential landfall. The Atlantic there generally looking decent. 28 degrees Celsius among parts of the Cuban coastline, and getting to 26 degrees quite well out of the sea now. Looking east, the Indian Ocean, 30 degrees in 4 different quadrants there, you could say. Generally, temperatures are good. South China Sea, also fairly warm, but once again, the northern part way below average right now along the coast of China. The western part of the Philippine Sea, I should say there, the Philippine Sea looking decent too, 30 degrees. possible in some of those areas near the Philippines, but generally 28 plus quite easily way out beyond the Mariana Islands. Not much else to say on that graphic, I don't think, but looking pretty warm over there. And here's the sea surface temperature anomalies right now. The La Nina sticks out like a sore thumb, of course. I think I may be noticing that the above average areas in the eastern Pacific have tapered off a little bit, and in the western Atlantic, look at that, way above average right now, and in the Gulf of Mexico, the Caribbean, around normal. Ocean heat content continues to grow little by little. I think the most interesting part there is the Northern Caribbean, which appears to have come on quite well recently. Eastern Pacific also ballooning up a little bit, but I must say for the 70% chance area, there's not much ocean heat content around there. There's actually lingering more around where that 10% one is. Well, let's check out the latest computer models then. This is what we're looking at in the Eastern Pacific now. You can see there the development of that tropical cyclone. That's around 3 to 4 days out, and it becomes, according to the GFS at least, a major hurricane as it approaches the coast of Mexico. We're not sure whether that's going to happen. I don't think any of the other models are on board with that yet, but it is something that people really need to be watching along the coastlines there, mainly for Oaxaca and I think Chiapas in Mexico, if I've got my regional geography correct. Western Pacific, there's that formation of that little thing there on the right hand side. It's tagged 92W, by the way, Indes 92, and you can see it there slowly jaunting towards the north early on in this run. Look out for it. There it is. A small system with tropical storm force winds. Will that happen? Well, several of the other models do have something forming there, but I don't think many of them get beyond tropical depression status, and a storm at the end of that run too, you just saw there. And in the Australian region, the GFS is getting curiously close to becoming, to showing a tropical cyclone or something of the form headed towards Australia. I think it's a little bit too late in the season for this one, but you never know, it might try to do something. This has also got mild backing from one or two other models, but we haven't yet designated it on our charts just yet. Something to watch out for in that region. Looking towards the longer range, 5 to 10 days, that's the landfall there in Mexico, probably as a hurricane, and what's left of it eventually, or its energy, arrives in the Gulf of Mexico, the southernmost Gulf, and tries to become a cyclone again, and back there it is again in the southern part there off the coast of Mexico, and becomes another storm, possibly a different storm from its different energy. Very confusing. In the Atlantic though, the western Atlantic there, you can see potentially a tropical cyclone forming there as well, or something that tries to get its act together. I'm not convinced by that run, and that is quite long range out. Western Pacific, that's that second storm that forms there in the Philippine Sea in day 5, day 6, and another little not depression but a low pressure area there making itself known around Guam and moving off into the Philippine Sea. But generally I doubt that most of what's shown here on the GFS will transpire. So that's the main business sorted out on tonight's Tropical Weather Bulletin, so it's time to do my spiel. You can scan that code there for the Force 13 merch store. Not only do we do merchandise with hoodies and shirts and hats and all kinds of weird stuff, but you can also now request animations on there too. And here's silly range then for the Atlantic. You can see a few things bubbling up, potential tropical cyclones. I mean, if all of this did transpire, we would have a busy start to the season, but the way things are going right now, I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced at all. And perhaps maybe a little bit surprising of how quiet the Atlantic hurricane season has been right at the very beginning. Certainly from what I was projecting just in April, I think it has started fairly quiet indeed. But the season hasn't even started by official standards yet, but what we've been used to recently is many storms forming. Of course, in 2020 we're up to Cristobal at the start of the season. In the Western Pacific, this is what we're looking at in the very long range as well. Maybe it spits out one or two more systems in the Philippine Sea. There's one. But generally the Western Pacific is being kept very quiet and tame as well, so no big bangs early on. Well, of course we've already had the one or two already, but none for the traditional start of the season period, it looks like. But you never know. On this day, a much different thing was happening in 2018. A Category 3 cyclone was making landfall on the Arabian Peninsula in Oman, Cyclone Mekunu, on May 25th, 2018. And we covered that on Force 13. You'll be able to find that if you search it up on our channel to see how we did our coverage. And that was, of course, a significant storm, one of the strongest to make landfall on the Arabian Peninsula. A historic storm by many accounts, certainly where it ended up, but also where it formed near Socotra Island off the eastern coast of Africa. Well then, looking on forward, we are in code blue, by the way, obviously for the Eastern Pacific. The first name on the Atlantic naming list, though, is Alex. In the Eastern Pacific, it would be Agatha, which could be something to watch. And in the Central Pacific, the next name is Hone. In the Western Pacific, Chaba is next up on the list. And in the North Indian Ocean, we are now looking out for Sitrang. 26 storms have formed so far this year, and we're about 23% below average in terms of cyclone energy to date. In the Australian region, the next name is Darian. The Southwest Indian Ocean, if there's time, let Lama, and in the South Pacific, it's Harley. That's all for tonight's Tropical Weather Bulletin. We'll have another one tomorrow.